All right, thank you. So writing is rewriting or grading writing, editing reverse learning. So I'm going to start talking a little bit about grading because grading is a big issue we deal with as instructors and as students as well. So I'll go a little bit from grading to ungrading. And I wanted to start with the grading criteria at Western University, which is where I am located. And this is how it used to be up to 2013 for writing studies. The general grading rubric was like so. For an A, you would have something relatively rare in terms of skills. So clear purpose, coherent and cohesive writing, varied prose style. Those were considered rare abilities. And to get an A plus, that would be very rare, and that would be unusual skill. And that begs the question, rare compared to what? Unusual skill compared to whose? Because those are comparative words fundamentally. So we're saying that some students are not going to be able to achieve that. That's basically what the grading criteria implies. We have changed from that one. We now work with this one at the bottom. So I just got the A minus because now we have A minus, A plus. But still we're looking at qualities such as the ability to anticipate possible objections or criticism, paragraph breaks that reflect meaningful, effective shifts in topic and argumentation, seamless integrated quotations, a strong sense of style, rhetorically impressive. So we still have this idea that those, to get an A, for instance, we need to have very sharp writing skills, and that is fair. But do we teach those skills? Do we teach students to achieve those effects in writing? Because if we don't do that in the classroom, who is more likely to get an A? So we tend to think that grading should always be very consistent and that everyone should get a very fair criteria. But usually that means that, and this is quoting Susan Bloom's book on ungrading, she's quoting another composition writer who is claiming that real readers in natural settings do not read like that. If we have very consistent grading, that might be consistent for artificial texts in imposed agreements, but not necessarily for texts that circulate and that people read. I want to use IELTS essays as an example of that. They are very consistently graded all around the world, but they are not very good examples of how people actually and effectively communicate in writing. Another excerpt from the ungrading book by Bloom is Laura Gibbs' article, chapter actually, about her own experiences with ungrading, which is a movement that started really in 2013, is with Alfie Kohn's book, and really took some, got very famous and more, gathered a lot of attention during the pandemic when we had to rethink our teaching habits. So ungrading, according to Laura Gibbs, helped her students go from the mindset of, I need an A, so I'll do whatever it takes for an A, and go to, I will learn so that my learning will be reflected in that grade that might be an A. So the biggest challenge, she says, the biggest challenge I face as a teacher is helping students to free themselves from the habit of doing the bare minimum. The issue is we still have to grade them. And those grades are still very important to their lives. They significantly impact their future. This is an excerpt of an article called We Are Still Grading by Fernandez et al. That is critical of ungrading as a solution because especially as composition teachers, we have to teach them to write because writing is important for life, to do things, to achieve things, not just academically but also their writing that they get in the classroom is reflected in their grades, and those grades can get them to new programs or can effectively finish their lives, their academic lives. So we still have to grade, but how can we grade in a way that teaches students to value not just the grade, but the learning process? So I want to think a little bit about why we even teach writing in the first place. So there's another excerpt from Bloom. She says that it is interesting, right, that we only grade the final product of writing. We only grade the final thing. We don't see what the students did to reach that stage. And a lot of times they don't know that they should have done more than just writing. So I wanted us to think, all of us are experienced writers here because we are academics. How many times has your paper been accepted for publication without a single minor revision? I can't see your faces, but I hope you're laughing. How easy is it to write a paragraph or even a sentence that conveys your point on the first try. As an example, I had to write these questions many times, and I don't know how good they are to convey what I meant, because that's what writing is. It is actually editing and rewriting. So I wanted us to think how my students who are beginning to write for a professional audience, they are learning those skills yet. How can they benefit from putting editing and rewriting at the forefront of their work? And I think that has to do with grading. They have to be graded in a way that teaches them to value those things. So I am very inspired by Professor Paulo Coimbra Guedes. He's a professor at the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul. He wrote this book, From Composition to Text, a writing manual. It hasn't been translated into English, so this is a free translation by me, as are all quotations by Coimbra Guedes. And he teaches at the university, has taught there for 40 years. And one thing he has noticed is that students tend to write for the instructor, thinking that the instructor will just collect their mistakes and show them their mistakes. And if there aren't any mistakes, they're going to get a perfect grade. And that's what students often come to us. Oh, but why did I get an 86, right? I could have gotten a 90. This is the mentality, right? And his biggest insight happened when a student made fun of another student in his classroom for having had the great composition about something he cared about, surfboards. And he realized that students, the reason why it was funny is that students tend to think, because we teach them so, that, and I'll quote him directly, the most remarkable aspect of a text should necessarily be its inauthenticity. Coimbra Guedes is very inspired by Paulo Freire, especially the importance of the act of reading, which to my knowledge hasn't been translated into English, and Pedagogy of the Oppressed, which have. In these books, we see Paulo Freire is focused on reading and writing with a purpose. So you read as an audience. I read because something is communicated to me, and I write for an audience. I write because I want people to know something, to learn something, to hear me. And in Pedagogy of the Oppressed, we think about teaching and learning as dialogical. So they are mutually influenced. I teach and I learn from teaching, and so on. So this logic gets us to an education that works towards developing autonomy and community. I write for my community because I want to do something for my community, and I want to get something for my community. So knowledge, as per Freire, knowledge emerges only through invention and reinvention. So I write, I rewrite, I communicate, I see if that communication worked in the first place. So what Guedes does is he thinks that the writing teacher's task starts by getting something that the student wrote and helping that student see what is it that they wanted to say in the first place. And now that we've had this conversation, that we've had uh, this process, they can write a new version and get to what it is that they wanted to say in the first place. So we're thinking authenticity. I write because I want to communicate. Guedes works with discursive qualities. He's been teaching this way for 4 decades, as far as I remember. And I was a student, and I had the opportunity to practice this in class, where we read our text out loud to our classmates, and our classmates give us feedback based on these discursive qualities. Theme. So is this related to the topic? Did you use words and expressions that connect to the topic at hand and other topics that might be related? Objectivity is, do you tell me everything that I need to know to follow what you want to say? Concreteness is how you substantiate your story or your arguments. So if you tell me something is sad, okay, sad is very vague. How do you make sad make sense to me if we're not the same person? So it's a lot to do with authority, writing for the author, writing for an audience. And finally, inquiry is, and he says this, every text must give its reader a good reason for them to read it. So what am I saying? That you have to listen, because I'm saying it, and it's going to make an impact. It's going to make a difference to you. So taking that into consideration, I wanted to suggest how we can grade editing, some tasks that we can use to get students to value editing and rewriting as part of the writing process. So one thing we can do is break it down. We do this a lot by telling students, say, first you write the introduction, and now you write the body, and then you write the conclusion. In my personal experience, that really doesn't work for me, and I guess it doesn't work for a lot of you. We don't usually sit down and linearly create what we want to say. right? We go back, we change that introduction, we move paragraphs around, we get to the conclusion and realize we wanted to say something different in the first place. So we have to teach them that writing is not linear. We have to break it down. And one way I suggest we can break it down is by using these discursive qualities, such as inquiry. We get students to write down, why am I writing? Yes, it's because the teacher told me to write. But what can I do? What can I say that is different from everyone else is saying? Why am I writing about this topic? Why am I giving this perspective? Objectivity is also important. Does my reader need to know? And I have to imagine a reader for that. My reader has to know something to be able to follow what I'm going to say. And if they don't know that, I have to inform them. Concreteness is very important because I have to know, okay, how can I get the reader to make sense of what I'm saying? If I'm saying something sad, like I said before, just sad doesn't quite cut it. I have to illustrate it. So how can I illustrate it? And after I'm done with that list, I can look back and say, okay, but what if my point, the inquiry that I proposed, doesn't really need this? So this is a process of planning that puts the reader at the center. Who am I writing this for? You can also break down grades. So a strategy that I think about and that I've used many times is you can do pass fail for one part of the work. So just handing it in and matching, of course, the criterion. That would be a pass or a fail for not doing the prep work. And if the essay that you do submit just looks just like your draft, that cancels your pass fail situation. So that's something you can do, pass fail for one stage and a number grade for a final work, or the other way around. You can have a task breakdown. So 20 marks, say I have 6 for one part of the process, 6 for the first draft that is read in class, and 8 for the final version that is thoroughly edited as per the feedback given. Or self-assessment, which is also very popular in ungraded courses for the whole stage, for the whole task or for stages of it. And also showing your work is something that can help. We tend to show our work in math to make the teacher know that we know how to do this. So we can do this by showing them our work, like editing something we wrote for them to see. They don't have to understand your entire paper, but show them a paragraph and show them how, look at the sentence. It's quite long, right? Maybe if I make it into 2 sentences, but is it clear now? Or is something missing? Can you follow what I'm saying? They can see you do that and realize that this is what they should do. We don't show them that we do this, but we do this all the time. We can do that even with their own work. We can ask them to write something and then collect those paragraphs. And of course, not using names, we can edit with them together. So see how this sentence just says, disclaims this and doesn't really do the work of showing how this is, or see how these arguments go first, second, and third. There's no connection between them. Or we can even use newspapers, news articles, and get them to be critical of what they're reading. Like, is this enough information on this news article? Is this biased? Is there something missing here? So editing stuff with them can help them see that writing really is that. And that can be a task of its own, a pass fail or something graded. Uh, Most importantly, what Coimbra Guedes does in his class is that he asks everyone to write a text and everyone reads in class and he reads and gets feedback from everyone. And the feedback can't be this is good, this is bad. It has to be discursive quality related. So the theme isn't clear for this and this reason, or the objectivity, it's not objective enough because you said this word and that, it has to be related to that. Reading out loud and getting students to realize they're writing for an audience. So you can do that in the form of a class symposium or a video essay project or a class journal project, collaborative, communicative writing where students try to write for an audience with a purpose, meaning to add something to the conversation, not simply write because they get an A or because they have to write to pass the course, but writing because writing makes us who we are, makes us part of a community. Sorry, I tried to go very fast because I wasted a lot of your time with my slides not working. These are my works cited. And that's it. Thank you very much.